Please welcome, I welcome Mr. Dr. Arun Sam.
Good morning, Anirban and Shantanu. Can you please make me the co-host?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I hope all of you can see my screen right now. So good morning, everyone. And I think all of us have something or the other to do with foreign language education. So today I'll quickly go through the layout of my presentation. It's divided into four sections. So I'll first talk about language learning in terms in the sense of the Japanese language education scenario in India and broadly in South Asia, and the need for intercultural competence. And the second one is the project that I'm running right now. The third one, the issues and challenges that are there. And fourth, I'll summarize this. I should probably be done in 6 to 8 minutes. So my name is Arun Sham. I teach the English and Foreign Languages University. It's a small university in South India. In Hyderabad. So I teach the undergraduate course in Japanese there. Now, here are 5 major issues that I think sort of plague the Japanese language learning scenario in India and South Asia. One is that language is learned for language's sake. Second is that there's quite the environment that the students get to use the language is artificial and inauthentic. So we might have role plays per se, but then it's the environment in which the students are using the language is quite artificial. And the third one is what I've mentioned here as a deficit-based approach is that we often think of what is not there rather than as in what is available in our hands. So one example, even the keynote speaker mentioned this, is that when we had to switch over to online education, there were this notion that there are a lot of things that could not be done, that we could not compensate when you compare, let's say, a normal classroom lecture. So I'll talk more about this later. And the fourth one is what is context neutral learning. What this means essentially is that there is a tendency for classrooms to neutralize the identity of the student. So generally most classrooms, especially in the Japanese language learning scenario, is students generally bring their identities from the classrooms, from their houses. They check in their identity into the, like a hotel, and then they go into the classroom where they become this one set of people with no all the uniqueness taken away and so on. And the fifth one is this overemphasis on linguistic competence. So emphasis on how well you can speak the language correctly in terms of grammar and so on. So the need of the hour right now is that language should be considered as a tool, as it is, or a means of communication rather than learning for language sake. Another thing is that in an inauthentic or not an authentic environment, what happens is that the learner is quite a passive player in this entire thing. So active learning, I think most of us agree, is the need of the hour. And from a deficit-based approach, looking at an asset-based approach. So for example, if the classes are done online, what are the things that we can do that we could not do or we cannot do in a normal classroom? I think even the keynote speaker talked about this. When we bring the classrooms into the houses, of course, there are things that we can't do, but then there are multiple things that we can right now do, which we were not able to do in the normal, the conventional classroom learning environment. And another is, the identity of the student. Right now, they are in their houses. They are not in the classroom, and this allows us to, help the students work on their uniqueness, on their identity, on using their identities, the learnings that they have, the background that they have, to to sort of put a layer on the language, which brings out originality into their language learning. And the fifth one is intercultural competence. Now, while most of us agree as to why all of these are required, what is important is that we look at the reasons why we need it. So There are four major imperatives that make us go for this. One is the demographic imperative, which is that the society, the community that we live in, where our students are going to use the language that we are teaching, is a community that is for example, in my case, if it's Japanese language, it's just not Japanese who are speaking Japanese. It's about 400. We have about 4 million Japanese language speakers of different ethnicities, different cultures coming over. So we are moving towards a society where we have where people who might have a common language but come from different cultural frameworks. Then you have the technological imperative, which is that technology has made it mandatory to interact with multiple cultures. Then you have the economical. Most of our students, when they work, they will be in a place where they're using language not just for let's say Indians, but with people of different nationalities, people within those nationalities who come from different cultures. And then, of course, the peace imperative, because essentially language is essentially the world. You can look at it as people communicating with each other. And if apart from this overemphasis on, I repeat, the overemphasis on linguistic competence, it's not that it's not required, but the scale is heavily tilted towards the linguistic competence, at least in the Japanese language education field. And hence, with these four with the world moving in this direction, these 5 principles are something that we need to bring into our education, into our foreign language education system, if we have to enable our students to interact and be competent in the modern world, so to speak. So I won't read this out. Most of you who have worked in intercultural competence would be aware of this. This is by Lustig and Coaster. They have talked about what intercultural competence is. And this is where I believe the Sekai to Watashi project. This is roughly translated as the world and I. And this is a project that I've been running for the past 3 months, right after the COVID-19 thing came up, and most of my students had to go back. So what this project is so we went to the second part of my presentation, which I'll talk about the project. So it's an online theme-based chat space. The language is Japanese, and I run it on Zoom, and it's a weekly. It's done every week. We have one round, and participants are students of any level. So this is where the asset-based approach work, in the sense that it's not that a student who has just started can't participate; they can also participate. The point is that the participants understand each other. They understand what each other's levels are, and then navigate their way in communicating what they want to do at the level that they can do. And we have native speakers and any Japanese language speaker. So even a person outside the university, outside the institutions, get a chance to come in and participate. As of 8 July, we finished around 13 rounds of this, and there's no registration fee. So the community right now, we start out as a small community of 19 members, and then we have about 345 members, and from 18 countries. The common factor among all these 343 is that they all speak speak the language. Now, this is run by a colleague of mine in Poland, and both of us, we've been doing this for the past 2-3 months. Now, there's a 3-step process as to how we run this project. So people get to register online on the website, and then they are divided into groups. The grouping is basically done on random, making sure that there are people of different communities and cultures that are in each group. And then they all come online on Zoom. So an example of how one round is, I'll just take you through one example. So for example, we posted on Facebook, SNS, the posters, and then people join, and then they're divided into groups. So in round 13, that was done 2 days back, we had about 70 odd people from 70 countries. And if you look at the composition, you had teachers. Teachers are of different Japanese levels, some who are who have been doing it for 20 years, some who've just joined teaching. Then you have students who were at levels of, let's say, from A1 all the way to people who have been in Japan for a long time. And we had native speakers, about 19 of them. So we have about 20% of native speakers joining us. So this allows the participants to sort of see what the norm is and how to deviate from the norm as well. In round 13, the theme was roughly translated as how much does bread cost in your country. So so what the participants do is they're divided into these groups and they work, and as they chat, they work on these worksheets that we provide on Google Docs. Once they are in their group, they go into the Google Docs, and then we sort of provide them this worksheet where they, in this round, they had to interact and figure out. So the essential question was that if you were to go to their part of the country or their country and want to lead a life, what is the cost of life there? And they had to navigate that space and try to understand that if you had this much amount, what would your life be in each of their countries?
If you can start your presentation.
Yeah, this is my.
It is a very nice thing going on. It's very interesting.
Yeah, this is my last minute. 1 minute.
Nothing else. Please don't mind.
No problem. Thank you. So the challenge is that there's digital divide, as most of us are aware of it. There is the first level digital divide, especially in South Asia. So there's access gap, not having enough bandwidth. And then you have second level digital divide as well, which is the intensity of the usage. So people who have internet, but then they are the first generation to use it. And therefore they find it very hard to join these sessions. And these are the unseen learners. So I right now don't have an answer to how to bridge this gap over here. The second is democratizing the platform itself. It's being run right now with me and Anna right now, and we want to make it a participant-led process so that the active learning starts right from the theme setting to scheduling to the running of the event. And another thing that is lacking is we have not yet done any qualitative or quantitative studies to measure the efficacy of this project itself. So if the members over here know of any framework with which we can measure efficacy, because intercultural competence is difficult to measure. And that's one thing that we find are the challenges and further scope of study. So just to wrap it up, so we have these 4 major imperatives which necessitates this type of active learning, asset-based approach, where the identity of the students come into play, and that language, not learning language for language's sake, but language as a tool, and then allowing that tool to build their competence in communicating well with people from different cultures. And this is where the Sekai to Watashi project is placed. And the main aim is for this project is to be a platform for language speakers. And the reason I mentioned speakers and not learners is because right from the get-go, the moment you say the first word in a language, we sort of consider them as a speaker and not as a learner over here. And it is for them to communicate and collaborate with multiple cultures, and to have a self-directed inquiry, to reflect, and to learn in an authentic environment. So that's all for from my side. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.